Hey guys, how you doing? Ron's a Nut here. Well, today I've got a new review for you. This is of the LIAN Li D600 aluminum modular cube case. Now this case was originally introduced at Computex 2013, and I was fortunate enough to get one sent to me direct from LIAN Li so that I could bring it to you. Now, this case features all aluminum design, as with most LIAN Li cases, and this one here is a black aluminum finish. It also comes in silver as well. Now this case is a dual compartment design, which offers tremendous amount of flexibility for both air cooling and water cooling. So let's have a close-up look at it, and then we're going to put a kit of parts in there and see how well and how easy it is to install. Let's have a look. The D600 is again all aluminum construction. This finish is a black brushed aluminum finish. The dimensions of the case are 382 millimeters wide by 525 millimeters high by 455 millimeters deep, or 15 inches wide by 20 inches tall by 16.3 inches deep. The weight is 9.2 kilos, which is about 20 pounds. Looking at the front of the D600, on the left hand side we have ventilated space that covers 340 millimeter fans, and over on the right hand side we have 10 5¼ inch bays. Now the top bay is filled with a front I/O panel, which we have the power button, reset, HD indicator and power on indicator lights, 4 USB 3.0 ports, and your HD audio for your headphones and your microphone. Now in order to access the inside of the front panel, there is a thumb screw at the bottom of the front panel, which I'll remove. And once that's removed, all we need to do is pull the front panel off, and we'll take a quick look here. The front panel is secured in place by 4 posts and 2 pins to help guide it in the bottom front of the chassis, and then the posts secure into these catches that are located at the top and the bottom of the D600. After removing the front cover, we see we have now access to the 340 millimeter fans, and they have each individual fan filters. Fan filters are removed by simply just pulling back the 2 clips and removing the filter for easy cleaning, and then to reinstall them is simply slide them back in and snap them back into place. Now on the 5¼ inch drive bays, each of them, as you can see, is ventilated. In order to remove the drive bay cover, you press in on each side of the cover, and you have it completely removed. Now one thing to note is inside each of these covers there's a plastic frame. When you remove that frame, you find that it holds a piece of aluminum mesh filter for your each 5¼ inch bay. And then to simply then you clean it and snap it back into place. In order to reinstall it, you just simply push the pins on either side into place and they lock. After removing the 9 5¼ inch drive bay covers, what we see is 2 120 millimeter fans mounted in a modular set of frames that allow you to reverse these fans. So currently they're pushing air into the case, but you can reverse them and put them on the other side of the drive bay cage so that they are pulling and blowing air out, if you like, and we'll take a look at that later. The other thing to note here is the modularity of the drive bay system. There are 6 thumb screws that you remove. And after doing so, it allows you to pull the whole drive system completely out of the D600. And as you can see, there are a number of slots so to reconfigure the drives and devices in the bays, and we'll take a look at that here shortly. To reinstall the drive cage, you merely have to move all the cabling back inside the cage, make sure it's not pinched anywhere, and then slowly adjust the drive cage and lift it up, and you slide it back into position. And then what you need to do then is resecure it with the 6 thumb screws to get it back in place. So after we've inserted the drive cage and secured it with the 6 thumb screws, sliding the front drive bay covers back into place, and then simply putting the front panel back on by lining up the front panel with the front of the case. They snap into place, and then reinstalling the thumb screw at the bottom of the case to hold it back in place is all we need to do. Now let's have a look at the top of the case. Looking at the top of the case now, we continue to have this nice brushed black aluminum finish. And then over here we have positions for 220 millimeter fan mounts. Now we'll take a closer look when we get inside of the case, but that is over the CPU compartment. So I'm expecting that we're going to be able to see capability to mount a 240 millimeter rad in that spot as well. Now, accessing the side panel here, we just merely pull the panel off. LIAN Li has designed these little latching pins to fit in the mating latching mechanism, very much like the front panel. So all you really need to do is pull the panel right off and they come off. So there's no screws or anything that you need to worry about. And this exposes the basically what traditionally is the cable management side of a case. And in this case it does provide for that, but it also does, since this is a dual bay case, you have 2 compartments. This side now is giving you the access for all of the hard drives and also the capability to mount more fans for cooling in this side, or radiators as well. Now with the side panel removed, let's have a look at all of the drive bays. Now here we have at the top of the drive bays, we have 4 5¼ devices that could be mounted, optical drives or fan controllers or what have you. Then we have at the lower section 2 of the hard disk drive cages. Now you saw when I removed the front panel that each of them had a 120 millimeter fan attached to them, but they're also capable of holding each 3 3.5-inch hard drives and 2 2.5-inch drives or SSDs. Same for the bottom one here. So that gives you total capability of hard drives with the supplied hard drive cages of 6 3.5-inch hard drives and 4 2.5-inch drives or SSDs. And also for drives, there's a mounting plate down here for 2 more 2.5-inch drives or SSDs. Now coming from the front I/O panel, we have your standard power, reset, power LED, hard disk activity LED, and then coming from the fans in the 2 hard drive cages, we also have the 2 fan headers for the 120 millimeter fans here. And then also we have the HD audio, and since there are 4 USB 3.0 ports on that, we have 2 USB 3.0 motherboard headers that you can plug into. Now speaking of cables, we do have some clips that LIAN Li provides that can be reoriented. There are positions all over the side panel that allow you to move those cable clips to allow you to dress your power cables or any of the cables that you have coming through on this side of the case and orient them in a way that's more manageable for you. And the other thing to note, in looking at the back of the case here, you'll see there are 3 areas which you can mount fans. Now you can mount up to 3 120 millimeter fans or 3 140 millimeter fans. And there's plenty of space in here as well, so that you can mount either a 120 millimeter rad, a 240 millimeter rad, or 360 millimeter radiator, and also a 140 millimeter rad, a 280 or 420 millimeter rad back here in this space here. Now you do have enough space between the back panel and the back of the drive cage, even with some room to spare to mount your power and data cables, to fit a monster rad, an 80 millimeter rad with 2 fans on it and push-pull. That's 130 millimeters worth of space, which easily fits in here. Now if you do that though, some of the cable clips, you're going to have to position them out of the way further back so that they're not interfering, because they are a little tall, but other than that, you completely have plenty of space to do that. And then also, if you notice in the top of the case here, there's plenty of space to run your tubing and cables off from the other side. And we'll have a closer look, but there's the grommets holes here are very wide as well. Now let's have a look at the back of the case. Now looking at the back of the case, over on this side we just talked about the fans and the radiator mounting capabilities. And over on this side of the case we have a 120 millimeter fan with fan grill. We have 6 grommet holes for pass-throughs. We have 8 PCI slots and place for your motherboard I/O connector panel, as well as your power supply. Alright, now let's have a look at the main compartment of the PC D600. The first thing we notice, we have a large window, acrylic window on here that it's about 10 by 14 inches. And this panel, just as the other one, to remove it, you simply pull, and those nice latching mechanism and pins remove the panel very easily. Alright, with the panel removed, we now see we have more black aluminum in the inside here for mounting of your motherboard. The motherboard sizes that could be accommodated in this case are micro ATX, ATX, and E-ATX. Down at the bottom of the case here we have space for mounting your power supply. And then up in the roof here we have space for mounting 220 millimeter fans, or you could mount a 120 millimeter rad or a 240 millimeter rad like the Corsair. That is something to consider, and something we're going to take a look at here in a little bit when I put some parts inside the case. I'm going to rejig the camera to take a look at the fans in the front of this compartment. Now with regards to cooling in the front portion of this compartment, you see LIAN Li's provided factory 140 millimeter Jamicon fans, and these fans have fan grills that are mounted by self-tapping screws into this portion of the fans. Now if you wanted to put a radiator for water cooling in this front section, I removed the screws in the front of the center fan so you could see that the mounting points are only for 140 millimeter fan mounting points. So that means that you can use either a 140, 280, or a 420 millimeter rad in this section here. Now that's factory stock without any modification. Certainly there are brackets and things that you could do if you were into modding to make a plate or an adapter to be able to support a up to a 360 millimeter rad, so for 120 millimeter fan-based radiator. So, and those would be pretty easy to be done. But so I just wanted to point that out. That factory stock, you're looking at a 140, but it could very easily be made to support 120 based fans and rads. Well, now that we had a close-up look at the PC D600 case, let's install some parts and take a look at the assembly of those items and how easy they are to install. And then also what we want to do is take a look at some of the flexibility for the water cooling options this case provides. Alright, now inside the accessory box that comes with the PC D600, LIAN Li has provided 6 aluminum handles for the 3.5 inch hard disk drives. There is a USB 3.0 to 2.0 adapter cable. Then we have 3 3-pin to 4-pin power converters for your fans, if you want to use power that way and not go off right off the motherboard or your fan controller. Then we have a speaker. Then inside of this bag here we have 25 thumb screws for 3.5 inch hard disks. Then there's 8 M3 by 9.5 screws for 2.5 inch hard disks. There are 12 M3 by 6.2 screws for optical disk drives. And inside of here, this bag, we have all of the silica washers. They're silica gel rings for the 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch hard disk drives, and also a couple of spare part female clips for the side panels. Over here in this bag we have 5 screws for your power supply. Those are the black ones. And there are 12 thumb screws for your optical drives. And then in this bag here, this is a nice feature. It's not something you usually see. Those are thumb screws for mounting your motherboard. So instead of screwing screws directly into your motherboard, these are thin, some mostly short, and some taller thumb screws to be able to secure your motherboard onto the standoffs that are inside the case. And then over here We have a bunch of standoffs that you need. Depending on which motherboard type, you're going to need to add some more standoffs. Some are already installed into the back plate. And they provide a tool for use to secure your standoffs. It's kind of a screwdriver at one end as well. And then there's a few cable ties, and they do provide also a cable, self-adhesive cable clip. So that's the contents of the accessory box, and of course they provide a nice plastic case to put all these pieces in, so that you can organize them for your PC 600, your PC D600. So one of the things that we're going to do now is install an optical drive, a hard disk drive, and an SSD into the drive bay. And one of the nice features of the drive bay being removable from the PC D600 is that you can do it on a benchtop, make it very easy. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Well, we're going to start off with an optical drive. In order to prepare the optical drive for installation in the drive bay, you first need to install these M3 by 6.2 screws into the top two holes on either side of your optical drive. So we'll go ahead and do that. Installation of the optical drive, once you have the screws installed, is just merely sliding the optical drive back, and once that's in place, using two of the thumb screws, you will then secure it. And securing the optical drive then by putting these two thumb screws in onto one side of the optical drive, and we have the optical drive completely installed inside of the drive bay. Next, before we can install a hard drive inside one of the modular drive bays, we first need to mount it onto the mounting rail. So to do that, we take the 3.5-inch hard drive thumb screws and the silica gel, basically a rubber bushing, and we'll slide those on top of the thumb screw for the hard drives. As we have that done, we then take the hard drive and align it to the farthest back position right here. And what we'll do is we'll install one of these in that position. And there we have a finished assembled 3.5-inch hard drive into the drive carrier. Now, in order to install hard drive into the drive bay with the hard drive mounted inside the carrier and the silicone washers in place between the thumb screw and the drive, what we'll do is we'll slide it into this groove, and you'll notice the silicone washer rides inside the groove, right inside the hard drive housing. Now, once the hard drive is fully inserted, you unscrew this thumb screw, which then lowers the latch and prevents the drive from being able to be removed from the hard drive carrier. Then you can remove the drive bay completely from the drive housing, and if you like, you could install it reverse so that you would have then airflow coming from inside the back of the case blowing out through the front. So that is an option. The other thing to note is that you can buy a backplane, a hot swap backplane option that would replace this fan. So you would have a PCB and allow yourself to be able to install the hard drives in a hot swap fashion so that they could be removable and accessible from the front of the case. Again, that is an option that is available from LIAN Li. Now let's have a look at mounting a 2.5-inch or an SSD drive to the modular drive bay. Now, installing a 2.5-inch drive or an SSD inside of this modular drive bay simply requires 4 of the flathead screws that come with the LIAN Li parts kit, your SSD, and using the 4 mounting points on your SSD, you would then install them on the underside, and either the roof here, the top of this drive cage with the flathead screws, or you can install it in the bottom of the drive bay, again using the mounting screws provided. Now, in addition to mounting 2.5-inch drives or SSDs in the modular drive base, you can also mount them here on this side of the case with this mounting plate. Now, in order to do that, you would take your M3 by 9.5-inch screws. They do have a shoulder on there that allows you to mount the same rubber bushings or anti-vibration mounts that we use for the hard drives. And then you put them on each of the screws and then mount the screws to the side of the SSDs, just as we did with the hard drives on the hard drive bracket. And once you have the screws with the silicone bushings or washers mounted to the drive, then you simply place the drive and slide it down into the U channels and those 4 points that the washers will slide right into. And of course you can mount 2 more SSDs or 2.5-inch drives at the base here in this portion of the case. So that's enough at looking at an empty PC D600. How about looking at it from a real world aspect with a kit of parts in there? So I went ahead and installed a power supply, a motherboard, a GPU, and even a radiator on this side of the case to give you a feel for what some of the capabilities are, the flexibility that you have. Now, the power supply is a Corsair AX860i, and that is a fully modular power supply, so you only use the cables that you need to. And installing the cables through the grommets, running the EPS power up the back and up the top through that leftmost grommet was a piece of cake. Pulling cables in and out of there was no problem. The diameter of the grommet and the way it's secured in there was great. Never had an issue. I hate that with some cases have those that pop out, but not in this case. LIAN Li did a great job with those. The motherboard that's in here is an E-ATX motherboard. So it is, remember, this case will hold an ATX, micro ATX, and E-ATX. So, and that comes right up to the very edge. You see right here, right where this is a 60 mil rad, but it ends right there. And if you can see the grommet down here, there's 2 more of these vertically. And the motherboard ends right at the center point of the grommet space. So you can see I have the power cable is run through this grommet down here, the 24 pin, and comes out in the middle one, and then loops right around, plugs right into the motherboard. So that was great. Also, this case has 2 USB 3.0 cable headers. This motherboard happens to have 2 as well. So I have ran one out here, and the other one again is looped through that grommet right at the edge of the motherboard and plugged right in. SATA cables are not an issue. Here's this row of SATA connectors right down here, and I have a couple of SATA cables going through, and they actually are underneath behind the radiator. So this radiator does not impact your ability, even with it in place, to be able to connect and move SATA cables in there. From a GPU standpoint, that's a GeForce GTX Titan. That's 11 inches long, and so you can see that there's even about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch of room to spare with this rad in place. Obviously, if you did not have a radiator here, you can install much longer graphics cards. So there's plenty of space for even the most demanding and powerful graphics cards on the market now, even with a radiator in place here. Now, this is a 60 mil rad, and you have 25 mil fans, stock fans that come with the case. So that's 85 mil of space used up here. So in this configuration, this is a 280. You could get a 420. That is the thickest that you would use here. In order to have this is in the push configuration. So that's with this size motherboard and this size graphics card. Obviously, if you had a micro ATX or even an ATX, you might be able to get a little bit thicker rad, and here you probably could do an 80 mil, but again only in push, depending on what connectors and what else you had on your motherboard. So so that gives you a feel for this side of the case right now. Let's take a look at, let's take a look at putting a rad in the top of the case here. This is just about 70, right at about 70 mil between here and here. So that would allow you to get a 25 mil fan with a 45 mil rad. So let's see how that looks. Let's give it a real world check and see if it works. So radiators in the top of the case, I installed an XSPC AX240. That's a 45 millimeter thick rad with a set of standard fans and push. So those are 25 mil. That's a total of 70 mil, and that brings you right at the top line of the motherboard tray. So in this case, the motherboard here fits without any interference. In this corner, it's a little bit tight where the EPS cables are. That's about it, though. It does fit, no chafing, no pinching. It's just a snug fit. So with this motherboard, you can fit up to a 45 mil rad up in the top. Now, to give you a little bit more room and breathing room, and depending on your motherboard, some have VRMs that stick up even higher, but if they don't overlap the motherboard edge, you can fit up to a 45 mil rad here. But you might want to consider, you know, anybody using a Corsair H100i or any other 30 mil thick rad with a set of fans is a piece of cake. But again, remember, you have 70 mil from the roof to the edge of the motherboard tray. So as long as you have clearance, that's what you can fit. Now, you could not have another rad up in the top here like I had the 280. That would interfere, but you could have another rad down here if you wanted to. And you could orient this radiator with the fittings on the other side if you like. You just have to beware of this fan. You might not be using that fan, because it might just be a little too tight over there. Okay? Now on the other side of the case, you had already seen me install the SSD into the SSD mount down here in the bottom of the chassis. And then also on the front here we have the hard drive installed in a caddy and inside one of the modular bays. And then up the top I also have the optical drive installed. Now I went ahead and I used the cable mounts, and they provide you with two cable mounts that are really cable clips that snap into holes on the side of the mid plane. And they're okay, you know, it's a good idea, but I really wish that they would have provided some tie wrap mounts, a number of tie wrap mounts that were available. You know, it's just built into the case, those tiny little loop places that you can slide a tie wrap through and secure it. That would have been better execution, I think. But as far as cable is concerned, one of the things that is, you know, I guess key part of this design is that removable hard drive bay. Because that bay comes out, you need to remove that in order to run the power cables through coming from the power supply out and back into the other side of the bay. For example, the 24-pin power. You don't see it here because it's hidden behind that you know, the hard disk bay. And that whole bay is all one piece. It would have been nice if that was more modular. Maybe you could take out a section if you didn't need it, because in thinking of water cooling, it's going to kind of limit where you can bring tubes and hoses. I have a rad here. This is a 60 mil rad made by Hardware Labs. It's a Black Ice SR1, and that rad fits all the way down. I have the fittings up to the top, but if you were bringing, if you had your pump on the other side of the case, really the only place to bring tubing is over the top. Now there is another spot down in the lower bay of the drive bay, which does come through a grommet hole. But if you were to service or remove anything from the hard drives, you have to disconnect and remove that whole tube before you could slide out that whole tray. So again, you know, in thinking of water cooling options, it would have been nice if that bay was able to be split and the actual whole tray piece removed. But other than that, but as far as cablings, it does hide the cabling. So there's some cables on the other side of the tray. And the cable mount that were provided, I actually dressed the cables here. So that's all that I'm using. I haven't even used any tie wraps to secure it. So it's not that bad, but again, I think tie wrap mounts, mounting points throughout the back plane here, I think would have been better. Now this radiator is mounted directly from the back of the case, and it fits nicely, and there is plenty of space here. You could actually put another set of, you could do a push-pull on the fans here, If you did that, you would have to move some of the clips, the mounting clips that I used the positions that were closest to them, but you'd have to move them over. But that's the only other thing you'd have to worry about, really. So you could get a full push-pull here, and you can even use an 80 mil thick rad. So so having a rad, and this is a 360, you could actually put a 420 in here as well. Again, with the same results, and thickness is really not that big of an issue. So so pretty flexible as far as, you know, water cooling. Plenty of device space to mount optical drives and fan controllers and hard drives. Again, you can get up to 6 3.5-inch hard drives in the 2 sets of modular bays, and you can get 4 SSDs in the modular bays along with the additional 2. I'm just using one of them right down here at the bottom here. So, and obviously if you do use a thicker rad, it does hang over. Now, even if the lower hangs over this bracket, so that bracket can remain in place. There's no interference with having SSDs down there, even with thicker rads and fans. Okay, well, that's about it. Let's wrap this up. So there we have the LIAN Li PC D600 aluminum modular cube case. Now that case is all aluminum construction. The strength and the weight is just fantastic, very sturdy, easy to maneuver, easy to build in, beautiful black finish. I love the snap-on side panels, both the window side and the cable management side, or the drive bay side. The fact that you can get a 240 mil radiator in the roof, along with the rear, you can in the rear on the drive bay compartment, getting you know, 120 to 360 and a 140 to a 420 is fantastic. The front of the case, you can fit that you know, up to a 420, 140 through a 420. So very strong in the radiator department for water cooling. Air cooling, tremendous. You've got up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fans in that case. Everything from the drive bay fans to all of the exhaust capabilities that you have in that case, along with the intakes. So a tremendous amount of air cooling, not an issue there. I love that the toolkit they provide, some of the small detail, the attention to detail, thumb screws from the motherboard, and some of the large you know, grommets that stay in place. I really can appreciate all of the excellent attention to detail and high quality craftsmanship and work that was put into the design and the build of this case. Now, some of the things that that I wish they would look at to possibly improve on, maybe for the next iteration of this case. The power supply, if we could move that to the other side, or have the option to be moved to the other side, I think that would give a little more flexibility for the window side of the case. Maybe also put a radiator mount that you could mount in the bottom there of the case. That would give it some more flexibility for water cooling on that side. Tie wrap mounts on the behind the drive bays and on the back of the motherboard tray for the cable management side. The clips provided are very nice, great idea, but I think having tie wrap mounts built into the case would be an even more elegant, nice solution to aid in cable management. And then finally, one of the things that I thought about for the front radiator space, instead of just having 140 through 420 on this portion of the case behind there, having some adapter plates that would allow you to mount a 120 up to a 360 rad there. I think that would give it even more flexibility. But overall, this case is fantastic. The construction, the finish, the capability for both air and water cooling, it's all there. So I really, you know, I mean, those are all nice to haves. It would be nice, and some of the things I'm describing you can get in some, you know, custom boutique style computer case manufacturers, but you will also pay a premium for that. You will pay more. This case comes in at $359, and for an aluminum case with the qualities and the features of this case, I think it's a great deal. Personally, I give this 4 out of 5 nuts. So that's 4 out of 5 nuts from Ron's a Nut. And I like this case a lot. This build will be completed in this case, and you just might see it in a YouTube video from me down the road. So anyway, I hope you liked this review. If you did, please like and please favorite. And if you're so inclined, please subscribe. That's it from Ron's a Nut. I'd like to give a big thanks to the folks at LIAN Li for giving me this opportunity to review their case. So I hope you guys enjoyed the PC D600 review. Thanks for watching.